Yeah, welcome everybody. This is me talking about WinRM versus OpenSSH. This was something I wanted to look at to see where OpenSSH really sat at the moment, whether it was a competitor, if you like, of WinRM, whether it's something you could use internally, and just really to see where it kind of sat. So this is a kind of high-level overview of where the two of them sit at the moment. This isn't a deep dive. We've only got 30 minutes. There's no way I can do that. But yeah, so this is where this talk really came from. So just to start, big thanks to the sponsors. Please go and see them if you haven't already. I'm sure you have, but go and see them, thank them, and make sure that they think this is worthwhile so that they come back and we can do this all again next year. I'm going to be a little bit biased, and I'll tell you why. Please come by the Chocolatey booth. We have lots of T-shirts left. I don't want to take them home, neither does James, so please come by and take lots of T-shirts off of us. So I'm Paul Broadwith. I'm the technical engineering manager at Chocolatey Software. So my team and I are responsible for the Chocolatey products that you guys might be using. It's not what we're going to talk about today. I'm from Glasgow in Scotland, and I've got 32 years now in IT in a whole host of different sectors. Prior to getting into management, I was kind of operations, infrastructure and development type roles. I'm also a Microsoft MVP for Cloud and Data Center, primarily for my work in PowerShell. And I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. So if you see my talk on Monday, you'll know this slide, but I'm going to do it anyway. This slide is here for two reasons. It annoys Rob Sewell that I've got this here, so that's always a good reason to add it in. And the second reason is to remind me to tell you guys what we talked about on Monday, which is if not everybody's first language is English. In Scotland, we speak particularly fast. I may be all right for some, but not for others. Please tell me to slow down if I'm speaking too fast. Okay, can be quite nerve-wracking up here, considering I was expecting about a third of this audience. So yeah, let me know. We've also got a Q&A at the end. I'm hoping this will be about 30 minutes. It shouldn't go much longer. And we'll have 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you can keep your questions to then, that would be great. And that means we can get through the material. And if you want to come and see us afterwards, you don't get your question answered, I'll be at the Chocolatey booth or I'll be around. And you can ask me some questions on that. Okay, so the agenda we're going to look at, we're going to just look at both OpenSSH and WinRM, a very, very quick high-level overview, you know, where did they come from, what are they about, kind of a little bit of the differences. We're going to do a demo, which terrifies me because I hate demos because they always go wrong, so, and I've now jinxed it, so it will definitely go wrong. But we're going to look at a kind of quick demo of configuring WinRM, configuring OpenSSH, and just some of the kind of caveats. We'll just talk through it. We're also going to look at configurations manager support for SSH on Windows. That seems to, because they kind of communicate with nodes, that seemed to be a good place to look at, see what the support is for SSH on that, and kind of which to choose. We do have one to choose, not like my talk on Monday where I sort of copped out and didn't choose either. I will actually be choosing one today. And what does the future of OpenSSH hold? That's the new guy in town. What is the future for it? So first of all, who and what is WinRM? You probably all know this, but let's go for it anyway. WinRM is a standardized way to communicate and manage Windows systems, okay? So it's just another way to communicate with your endpoints. It was introduced all the way back into Vista. If you remember Vista, I'm sorry about that. I had to bring it up again, but it was introduced then, and Server 2008. And it's built on top of WMI. So it's just another layer that sits on top of that, and that allows WinRM to be able to manage Windows systems as well as communicate with them. It uses SOAP over HTTP and HTTPS. SOAP is the Simple Object Access Protocol, which I was speaking to someone just prior to this talk, and they thought it was quite simple. I don't think it's simple. I've done a little bit of work trying to use it, and it's far from simple, but that's what it's called. Maybe it was a joke, I don't know. But that's what it uses, effectively. And it's tightly coupled with PowerShell as well, as you'll know. It's built in a lot of the commandlets that do that communication, or all of the commandlets that do that communication, and it does all of that under the hood. So we talked about it was introduced with Vista in Server 2008, but what we're going to do is a kind of brief history of it here. All the way back in 2005, Microsoft announced it, so it's actually quite old in the tooth. What does that make it? 18 years old now. And it was released with PowerShell 1. As we mentioned there, in the previous slide, in 2008, Vista and Server 2008. And then in 2009, this is the big thing where Windows 7 was released, and that kind of increased adoption for WinRM and Windows in general, because I think we probably all agree that that was one of the better operating systems, Windows client operating systems that's been released. So people using that adoption goes up, organizations use it, etc. And then in 2012, we've got those improvements there, particularly the scalability and security that was added in. And again, that will get wider adoption by organizations, because still there are many organizations that don't trust WinRM. They'll prefer something that's even older. Within there, the security teams won't let it through firewalls and all various other things. But that scalability and security, again, increased that adoption because it did let more organizations trust it and use it. And obviously that's a good thing for the wider community. The good and bad, there is obviously good and bad with all software. It's got good native support. It's all built into the operating system. You don't have to do anything. You've got to configure it, but it's a commandlet. And then it's off you go and it works. It supports Kerberos and NTLM, so it's working with all your Active Directory. AD systems. It's working with other directory systems. You can get that single sign-on, quote unquote, between your machines. And it's also, as we mentioned, tightly coupled with PowerShell. You've got those commandlets there that do it all under the hood. But the bad, it's not cross-platform. I'm not entirely sure why Microsoft decided to reinvent the wheel rather than using maybe SSH to begin with or something else. None of us were in that room, I would imagine, then that decision was made, but there might be good reasons for that. But that ends up being a Windows-only system and it's not cross-platform. So if you're managing Linux or other Unix-type machines and you're managing Windows as well, you need more than one tool to do that job now. It can be complex to set up, particularly if you're using certificate-based authentication. This is the last time I'm going to mention that. We're not demoing that. But it can be difficult to set up depending on what your use case is. If it's just username and password, it's fairly straightforward. It's that commandlet to run. And it is a very heavyweight protocol compared to SSH. SSH is known to be very lightweight, very fast, and it's very performant, whereas WinRM, not saying it's not performant, but it's not as performant as SSH. But again, it all comes down to how you're using it, of course. So OpenSSH, or SSH, we're going to touch on to begin with. It's the old kid in the new town. What is that? So SSH enables user authentication methods based on public key cryptographic algorithms. Effectively, it's the same thing. You're communicating with your endpoints, whether it's WinRM or SSH. Most of us don't really care what goes on under the hood. It's another way to communicate with them. It was actually came about in 1995 by Tatu Ilonen. I'm going to butcher that name, so apologies if he ever watches this back on YouTube. But that's when it was created. That was version 1 all the way back in 95. SSH v2 was created by the IETF in 2006 for several different reasons. It was mainly to do with the insecurity on a lot of the protocols, algorithms that were used in SSH v1. They were getting cracked. They were old. They were weak. So they came up with this. And SSH v2 is a rewrite. It's not a fork. It's not, let's add on to it. It's a complete rewrite of the SSH protocol and using different auth and encryption algorithms as well. So that was SSH. So what is OpenSSH? So that's the open source implementation of SSH v2. So the reason it kind of came about, where you think, well, we've already got SSH, why do you now need OpenSSH? It doesn't make any sense. Tatu, at the time when he created SSH v1, made a commercial product out of it. And there were some concerns around about patents, licensing, and various other things that were going to cause an open source community concerns. So the OpenSSH project kind of forked that from OpenBSD's OpenSSH, and then Microsoft forked that. So you've got OpenBSD's OpenSSH, you've got OpenSSH, and then you've got Microsoft's fork of that as well. They're all forks of each other. And so that's how we ended up with OpenSSH on Windows. So originally, it's all the way back to OpenBSD. Just a brief history of this again, a little quicker than the WinRM one. 2015, this is OpenSSH on Windows. Okay, this isn't OpenSSH in general. 2015, that first pre-release was made. It's still available on GitHub, I believe. I don't think it did much, but it was a pre-release and it was released on GitHub. 2018 was the first production release. So it's been around now for 5 years, almost 5 years next month. And that was that version 7720. The latest version we've got is April. and that's 9220. So it's in the last 5 years, we've got up to second major version, third major version, yeah. That's been released. The current version is 9221, I believe, and it's a pre-release version. That's what we're going to be using for the demos today. So the good and bad for OpenSSH is it's cross-platform. It's one tool. Like we talked about, WinRM, very Windows specific. You've got multiple different operating systems. Your NICs and your Windows operating systems, then you need two tools. With OpenSSH or SSH, you've got one tool, does the job. You don't need multiple tools. It's widely supported. Obviously, it's way back to 95, even though there was problems back then. That's when it was created. People were using it. It's been around for a very, very long time. So that means it's got a huge user base, ensuring continued development. I think, again, we could probably all agree that the majority of server-based systems in the world are NIC systems. They're not Windows systems. So being able to manage both of those makes sense from one tool. And it's got more features. They added SCP, SFTP, and tunneling in there as well. So, but the bad for it, it's not out of the box. You have to install it. You have to configure it. It's not a job to configure it, but it still has to be done. It was born in Unix land, so if you've got Windows admins that have got no understanding, no familiarity with how things work in Unix land, that's maybe going to be a problem for them. Because of that's where it was born, and because the project's only 5 years old, there's a lack of support in Windows for it. But there is some support, and we're hoping that will grow, and that's what we're going to talk about. And the biggest issue for me is that, and I understand why they've done it, is in order to use the PowerShell commandlets, particularly the session ones and your invoke ones which connect to remote computers, you need to have a PowerShell subsystem installed. Again, I understand why they're doing that, but even on Linux, you have to install that on your Linux machines and then configure that subsystem there. Hopefully some more work will be done about that in the future, and I think it will probably go away so that you can use the tool and it's pretty seamless, but we have to do that at the moment. So demos, the bit I hate most. So I've got a couple of machines running in VMware Workstation. I have this machine here. I'm going to see, is that big enough for everybody? Should I make that bigger? Is that good? Yeah, guys at the back, all great, fantastic. So this is the machine that we're going to be running the code from. This is just, let's change slot. I don't care if it's changed as long as it's still running. That's the machine we're going to be connecting to, I hope. And we've got the code here. Hopefully that's big enough as well. Actually, I should look at the thing in front of me rather than the thing behind me. So rather than me running this in VS Code and then putting it into the terminal just below VS Code, I'm actually going to copy it back and forward, okay, because I think it's going to be clearer doing it that way. So what we're doing here is we're going to try and connect to that computer that I just showed you, that virtual machine, and run the SSH-V command. And what that does is it gives you just the version of SSH that's running. Now, you're going to look at that, you're going to laugh, but I was expecting that. No, that's supposed to be there. So the point I wanted to make was you need to add the machine into the trusted hosts. I'm not going to highlight that because it's going to look terrible. But that's the little bit of the configuration that we have to do. So I'm going to hopefully run this on that destination machine that said it was not connecting. See what I say about demos? Because it's, let's just restart it. Hopefully it'll come back. So what I was going to do there was going to, that enable PS remote, and you've used WinRM, you've run that command, you know what that does, and it was going to enable it on that destination machine. What I'm going to do in the meantime, and I'm hoping it comes up, if it doesn't, we're just going to go through the code. This is what we need to do here. So what that does is it adds into the trusted host. Again, if you've ever used WinRM, you'll know about this. It adds the destination machine into trusted host and allows me to connect to it. Now, I've used an asterisk here. That means it will connect to anything and I don't need to add individual machines. Obviously, never do this at home, kids. This is strictly for demo purposes. Don't do it in production. There we go, that's back. Can maybe not panic now. that failed as well, and there's a reason that failed. So we have to do a bit more work. So we need to run WinRM quick config, even on a machine we're connecting from rather than just to. And there we go, work that time. And we're going to go in here and we're going to run the enabling WinRM. So just to give you a brief overview of what we're going to do in the demo, actually, while I'm doing this, is we're going to configure WinRM, and then we're going to install OpenSSH using WinRM. So you don't have to go into that box and then install OpenSSH kind of manually through RDP. You can use WinRM to install and configure OpenSSH. So we're just going to enable PS remoting. I'm going to force it, and I'm just going to skip so that I don't have to worry about it. And there we go, that's that done. So we've done that, and then we're going to do this. And we're going to get that version of SSH. There is a reason I'm doing this. It'll become apparent in just a second, I hope. So that looks like it's errored, and it did. It's a bug. I don't know what it is. But what we're actually interested in, again, I'm not going to highlight it because it'll look terrible on the screen, but it's the OpenSSH version that's sitting there. What happens is Windows, in this case Windows 10, actually comes with OpenSSH out of the box. But it comes with quite an old version. It's 8.1. I'm assuming P1's a pre-release. Where the latest version, as I said, is 9.2.2.1, I think. So what we want to do is we could actually install OpenSSH and just hope that it picks that one up and not this one. But what I'm actually going to do is remove this one and then install the latest one on there. That makes more sense. And the way we're going to do that is by, what we're going to do? Yeah, we're going to look at the actual, that's it. That's the one I want there. I want to actually show you as well where it's installed. It's installed, there you go. It's under System32 OpenSSH, comes with Windows. So that makes sense. There's a reason I'm showing you that, because when we remove it and we install a new one, it gets into program files. So the way we actually remove it is with Windows capability commandlets. Actually, let me copy that, do that. Which I had actually genuinely never heard of or never used before this. It was a new thing on me. But what it's telling us there is OpenSSH client is installed on that machine. So it's just to let us know what it's there. And we're just going to remove it. You just use the remove Windows capability. And once that's gone, we're then going to install the latest version of OpenSSH. Okay. And then we're going to try and go back if we can find the command. And that should error now because there is no SSH on that destination machine anymore. So that's expected, it's gone, okay? So the easiest way, and I know I'm a little bit biased, but the easiest way to install OpenSSH is actually using the Chocolatey package. And the reason it is the easiest way is there's the maintainer who maintains a huge number of packages on a Chocolatey community repository has a universal installer script that will do all sorts of configuration for it without you manually having to do things. You just give it some package parameters, off it goes, and it does its thing. So that's why I'm doing it. On the GitHub repository, there are a couple of ways of installing it. There's a manual way, and there's the other way I can't remember. But this, for me, is the easiest way to do it. So I know I'm trying to dig myself out of a hole, but genuinely, it's the easiest way. So the latest version is actually a pre-release, which is why I've added the --pre onto the end there. And you've seen the package parameters. I'll go back later on and we can have a look at them. But the package parameters there was to install the agent feature, the server feature, and the key, I think it was a key-based authentication feature. We're only going to be looking at the server feature, but it allows you can install the client, for example, onto one machine, not install the server bits. You install the server and the client bit onto another machine. You can just install the server, but you've got flexibility there, which is why we're using the package. And I'll just jump up to these package parameters so that I can show you. And there they're there. Again, I won't highlight them because does it look terrible? It doesn't look that bad, actually. Yeah, that looks okay. So that's the package parameters there. just allowing you to install different bits. If you actually just install it with no package parameters, it's the client that installs. Definitely doesn't install the server, because that was a mistake I made the first time. So that's installed, and now we can check it's installed. I'll explain, this is a big long command just to get the SSH version, but I'll explain what it is. So the big long command we've got here, what we're really doing, because the execution policy is not reset, we need to change it. We need to import the Chocolatey profile module so that we can use this command. What that command does is, because we've installed SSH, it's on the path, but the PowerShell session doesn't know about it. So the refresh env command, what it does is it brings that path in and refreshes that in the session. That's all that does. And then we're getting the version here again, and we're getting where it's installed. So the version now, as you can see, is 9.2 at P1. So I was incorrect. I thought it was 9.2. Whatever it was. And we've also got it there, as I said, it will install in program files. So now we've got OpenSSH installed on the machine itself and not part of the Windows installation that comes out of the box. I'm not actually going to run that one because it caused me problems the last time, but let's have a look at we're going to see the services that are running, and bear in mind it's all running on that other machine. Let's see. Hopefully that's not hurting anybody's eyes. There we go. So we can see the SSHD, which is the SSH daemon, or daemon, whatever you want to call it, from Unix land. That's running. That's basically the server, SSH server. And we've got the SSH agent as well that you can use to manage your keys. We're not going to dig into that, but both those services are now running. The package started all of them and got all of that working. So we can now connect through SSH because we've got the SSH server running. First thing it's going to ask is, if you ever used SSH, you'll know it goes away and checks the thumbprint or the fingerprint of the destination system. Make sure it matches what you already have. That way, if it doesn't, the server's changed, could be a problem. But it also tell you about it if it's not there at all, which is what it's doing here, because this is the first time we've connected. So we just say yes, and then it's added that into the hosts. I type in my password, and there we go. We're on SSH. Now, it's not running PowerShell on the destination box. It's running cmd.exe, effectively. We're going to change the shell. You can use any of the shells. You can use PowerShell, you can use CMD, and you can use PowerShell core as well. I know we're not supposed to call it PowerShell core, it's supposed to be PowerShell, but it's PowerShell core to me, and it will be forever. So that's why I call it. And this is how we can configure it. I'm going to just show you the code. So if you want to put it back to the default shell, you just change the registry key, excuse me, and that's the normal one, that's cmd.exe. There's PowerShell itself if you want to add that in as well. But the one we're actually going to run is this one. So the PowerShell, sorry, the OpenSSH Chocolatey package actually comes with a script, which is another good reason to use it. You just give it to the path to the shell you want to use, and it sets everything up for you. So that's what we're going to use here. So I'm going to just run PowerShell. That's us on the box. And I'm going to run that. And it sets everything up for us. Okay. So if we then, let's see, if we can come out of that. And then we come out of that. We can go back in. And then it's running PowerShell core now. Okay. As I said, you can change it to Windows PowerShell, whatever it is. Whatever's on the box. And that's what's come out. So we can see what's running on WinRM. So we've now connecting back again through WinRM, and we're seeing what shell it's running. Okay. And it's running 5.1. So it's running PowerShell, Windows PowerShell. Okay. So we can, I'll explain this command before I run it. I didn't know about this either, so this has been a lesson for me as well. Using WinRM, you'll connect to Windows PowerShell, okay? Because that's when we run the enable PS remoting command, we ran it from Windows PowerShell, okay? So it sets up an endpoint for Windows PowerShell. Now you can have an endpoint for PowerShell core, but you need to run the command in PowerShell core. Okay, so you can actually have two. You can have the Windows PowerShell endpoint and you can have the PowerShell core endpoint both set up at the same time. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to run this first. We're going to go back over to that other box because we have to set up the endpoint. And there we go. If I run that. The reason you'll know this is PowerShell core and you're not doing it for anything else is it tells you in that warning. It's only been enabled for PowerShell 6 plus configurations. Okay. If you want to use Windows PowerShell, run it in Windows PowerShell and affects everything. This command here that I'm not going to run, but that's me trying to configure PowerShell WinRM and PowerShell core while running WinRM. It doesn't work, obviously. I was going to demonstrate that, but we're running a little behind, so I'm not going to do it. Yeah, so we've done that, and now what we're going to do, and I'll explain this in just a second once we've done it. So what this does is, and it's this bit at the end, so this command is what we've ran before, the top bit. Okay, this is what we ran. All we're doing is we're saying, you give me the PS version table, output that. But it's this bit here that connects to PowerShell core. So you've got to give it a configuration name. You can actually change it because what it does is it sets one up for PowerShell 7. I haven't tried this. Yeah, that didn't work. Okay, but this will work. So you can have it PowerShell 7, which will run the latest version of PowerShell 7 if you have multiple, if you can get that working. Or you can have 7.3.4, which is one that's on there. I know it's getting a little complicated. All I'm trying to say is that when you're doing it from a PowerShell core point of view, there's multiple different endpoints you can hit. Okay, and you can kind of configure it the way you want. So as you can see there, we're running 7.3.4. Okay, so we can connect through WinRM to PowerShell core. We can connect to Windows PowerShell itself. And then we do that by setting up different endpoints for the enable PS remoting commandlet. Or in OpenSSH, you can only have one thing to configure. You either get Windows PowerShell, PowerShell core, or you get cmd.exe, depending on how you've configured it. So the other way that, actually there's no point. So there is support for OpenSSH built in to some of the PowerShell commandlets. But you need to run them under PowerShell core. They don't work in Windows PowerShell, as you'd probably imagine. And the way you do it, let's just get this working first. Is that, let's see, you're going to be, I had this problem earlier and it was, I won't troubleshoot this for long. Let's see, host name. I know what it is, it's okay. It doesn't know what server IP is. So the way you normally do the invoke command is you use the computer name. Okay, and you just give it the IP address of the computer name. That's saying connect through WinRM. If you want to connect through SSH, you need to use host name. So you can see I'm using host name here rather than computer name. And that's saying connect through SSH. And I'll show you how we know we're connecting through SSH. Oh, that's what we've done wrong. So that does fail as we're supposed to do. There. Where does it say it's failed? It's there. No, this fails. This is me going to talk about the subsystem. So you need to add the subsystem in. And what the subsystem does is it sets up a PowerShell host on the OpenSSH destination computer, okay? So what we did is we used the SSH command to just connect to the machine, right? And the using SSH server. So we've seen that where we're getting, we changed to PowerShell and done some commands. However, if you want to use the PowerShell commandlets, you need to set up what's called the PowerShell subsystem, okay? And the way you do that is by adding this line into the configuration file. So the configuration file for OpenSSH is in program data, SSH, and it's called sshd config, and that's the server configuration file. I'm going to go through all of this, and I know this is small, so I'm not going to dig into it at all. That's all I'm going to do, and then I'll go and look at the code on the other one and explain a little bit. So we're just going to restart that service. And it's SSHD, and there we go, that works. So the thing here is, it's just a line that you add to the text file. The important bit is this. This drove me mad for about half an hour till I discovered it. If you're using anything less than 7.4 of PowerShell core, then you need to add no logo. Otherwise, the session immediately fails because it thinks when you run PowerShell core or Windows PowerShell, you know it says at the top, Windows PowerShell version blah, whatever version it is. Well, SSH thinks that's some sort of error and just terminates the session. Doesn't work. It's been a bug, it's been open since 2019, but it's fixed in 7.4, okay? So 7.4, you don't need no logo. Before that, you do. We're using 7.3.4, so this is the problem, okay? So if we go back to that new PS session that failed earlier on, remember it said it couldn't, that subset request failed in channel 0. We're going to work now. And there we go. So it's created that new session. We're not going to use the session, but you can see it's created it. And the final command that we're going to run is just to prove what we're running on. And as you can see there, I'm using host name again. So I'm connecting through SSH. And there we go. So we're running on 7.3.4. The way you can tell if you're running an SSH session is these bits. It adds in environment variables that's got your SSH client and SSH connection in there. So that says that's you're running through SSH. Okay. That's the demo done, and it did pretty much work. Do you want me to, you were taking a picture, is it that you're taking a picture of? Yeah? No? Do you want me to go back to that? Okay. Yeah, so that's the demo pretty much done. So configuration management support, this is going to be pretty quick because very, very few of them support it. Ansible has the best support for it, but their support is also experimental. So it's kind of, your mileage may vary. But there's this built into the Ansible itself, whereas the Puppet one that I've put a yellow tick next to is a module that claims it works on Windows. I say claims because I haven't used it. I'm not a Puppet person. But Windows is listed as one of the supported operating systems. All the others don't support it, including PowerShell DSC. It uses WinRM, as you'd imagine. It's quite tightly tied to that. That's not to say it won't use it in the future, but it doesn't use it just now. So the choice. Oh, I gave that one away. I hit it twice. You already know. Oh, well, let's just go now. It took me ages to get that animated as well. So WinRM is native to Windows, okay? So it's built in, it's out of the box, it all works. So that's a huge advantage for it. You don't need to do anything. You saw the number of steps you went through to install OpenSSH. It's not a huge number. We obviously took our time and I explained it all, but it's still stuff you have to do. Whereas WinRM, it's just there, it works. If you're using later than Vista or Server 2008, which I sincerely hope you are. It's a heavyweight protocol. As I said, it's that SOAP over HTTP, over HTTPS, but it is tightly coupled with PowerShell. Again, a huge advantage. OpenSSH is additional configuration. We talked about that. It is very lightweight, though. It's a very lightweight protocol. As I said, it's very performant, and that's what it was kind of built to do. It's got limited PowerShell couplings. We've seen that we've got those session commandlets that you can use. The invoke commandlets also have that dash host name parameter in there that means you use SSH as opposed to WinRM. So there is some, but it's not there yet. And there's no just enough of the administration stuff either. So there's none of that coming. That is possibly going to come later, but the sort of winner is obviously WinRM. Purely from it's up and running, it's quick, it works. Using OpenSSH doesn't really give you anything more today than WinRM does, unless you're using, you're managing Nix boxes. If you are, then having one tool might be a huge tick box for you. But even so, you've been using two tools right up till now, so why would you suddenly switch? It doesn't make a lot of sense. That's not to say OpenSSH won't be there in the future, but at the moment, I don't think it's something that you could recommend unless there's specific reasons in your organization to do so. So a couple of more slides and then we're done, I promise. I just wanted to, this is just a screenshot of the learn.microsoft.com and the URLs at the bottom there, you can find it. But the bits I just wanted to highlight is that the SSH-based remoting currently doesn't support remote endpoint configuration or just enough administration. It allows you to do basic PowerShell session remoting, and it creates a PowerShell host in the target computers and SSH subsystem. That was that subsystem line that we added in. So it doesn't work with the PowerShell commandlets without that. You can use the SSH command. We've done SSH and just the IP. You can use that. That just connects to the SSH server. But if you want to use the PowerShell commandlets, you need to set that subsystem up, otherwise it doesn't work. But it does say eventually we'll implement a general hosting model similar to WinRM to support that stuff. So this seems to be the way that Microsoft is going. Somebody mentioned to me before the talk that Microsoft haven't made any changes to WinRM in a number of years and the team have moved on to other things. I don't know if that's true, so I'm just repeating what I was told. But if that is the case, then OpenSSH, which they are putting effort into releasing, seems to be the next big thing for them, particularly for administration for Windows. So it might be something you want to at least be familiar with, get up to speed with, maybe install it, see how it works for you, because it'll probably be coming, becoming a bigger thing on Windows as we go forward. There's my details. That's me finished. And we have 7 and a bit minutes left. Do we have any questions at the back?
Is it possible to provide credentials when you're remoting over OpenSSH, or do you have to directly type in the password?
The question was, can you provide credentials when you're remoting over OpenSSH? You can use credentials. I just for the demo, I didn't do any of that. It did pop up with a password, but you can use key-based authentication, so you don't actually have to do anything. If you've ever used SSH on Linux, you'll know about that. Or you can use the username and password as well. So yeah, you can. And it's, at the moment, it doesn't have that Kerberos and NTLM stuff that WinRM has. So you would have to, it doesn't give you that kind of whole single sign-on thing. Yeah.
When using SSH key pairs, would it be possible then from the one session to connect to another session? So is it having a double hop problem?
The question is, if you're using key-based authentication, does it have the double hop problem? That's something I briefly looked at. And as far as I understand it, it doesn't have the double hop problem that WinRM can have. So that's the way to get around it. It does have other limitations, which that document that back there, go to that URL, will tell you about. Things like you can't use sudo in Linux and things like that. There are other limitations for OpenSSH, but I don't believe that's one of them. Anybody else got any questions? No? Cool, I got a wee light there, that's awesome. Thank you very much, guys.